Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz. We are starting our political shows where we interview the candidates, and I'm very pleased to welcome to the show tonight two candidates who are running for the Oshkosh Common Council. There are 3 seats available for the council, and 5 candidates are running. The remaining 3 candidates are already booked, and they will be on a future show. A couple things that you guys need to be aware of before we get into this. If you live in Oshkosh or in Winnebago County, Tuesday, February 6th is when absentee and early voting begins for the spring primary. The spring primary is on February 20th, and we're taping this on February 1st. Early voting can only be done at a new location that they've just started this year. It's 19 East Irving Avenue. That is on the corner of Irving and Jefferson Streets. For those of you who are townies, it's the old Electronics Industries building. But again, it's right on the corner of East Irving and Jefferson Street. And you can no longer early vote at City Hall. So I can't stress that enough. And then, of course, the general election, which is when you'll vote for council candidates, that will be held on Tuesday, April 2nd. So, with that, I'd like to welcome my guests to the show this evening. Could be a little confusing. They're both named Kris and Kristopher, and they both start with a K. But to my right is Kris Larson. He is the owner of Beckett's Restaurant here in town, and he's running for council, as well as to his right, Kristopher Ulrich, who I'm happy to say that I go to church with, and we're going to find out more about him during this next hour. So welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Why don't we just delve right into this? Why don't you guys start by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and why you're running for city council? Kristopher, why don't you go
I was
first?
going to say,
we got the
both
two Krises in Oshkosh. We spell their name with a K.
Yep.
Yeah, both.
There's
of them
only 2.
right now. And then Chris Carnes, I suppose. Anyways,
What would be the odds of this anyway?
We've been planning it for about 20 years, right? We thought about
So
this.
you've been in cahoots?
Oh yeah, for this whole time.
Well, the nice thing that we should point out right away, Kris and I are friends. We've known each other through different community work over the years. And I think that's a really nice thing about this batch of people who are running for council is that we all get along and they're good, smart people who want the right stuff for Oshkosh.
Yep.
So, but that's not the question. You asked me about myself.
Yes.
Thank you.
But I appreciate that insight. I do.
Absolutely. I've lived in Oshkosh my whole life. 6 generations in my family goes back in some form. Our old family farm is still a working farm. It's the Matuli farm now. But grown and raised here, and I was grown up with a respect for civic government and this expectation that if you are able, you should serve. I think the biggest part of my professional personality is that I'm a Rotarian. I like to think of myself as a professional volunteer. I left the workforce 6 years ago when we had our first child. I was working at the Community Foundation prior to that. And so I commit myself to raising my kids and going out and volunteering.
So you're a stay-at-home dad?
I'm a stay-at-home dad, yes.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Don't see that much anymore.
But you see, it's increasing,
really.
Which is the nice thing.
Yeah.
And as I go out and tell people about that, people come out of the woodwork saying, like guys in their 60s, oh, I wish I could have done that. Or, oh, I had 6 weeks of that and it was the best thing. But thank you, I love it. But why am I running for Common Council? I think that seed was planted maybe in 2017. I was in Leadership Oshkosh, and in the fall we had City Government Day. And I loved it. And it was shortly after that that I asked to be on my first commission. And I joined Landmarks a few years later, and then Stormwater, and then Plan Commission. And
bless you.
I like that kind of work. And Stormwater was not because I loved learning about, or that I was an expert in Stormwater, but I liked learning about it because I thought it was important. And that's what I'm telling people.
I served with you very briefly on that board.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I felt out of my element. I didn't have the first clue what was going on. I didn't.
It took me a long time to learn and appreciate it.
I too have served on different commissions and boards over the years, and I always knew what I was doing and I could find my way, but on that one, and I think too at that time we were meeting by Zoom, and I think that takes away sometimes from your ability to really understand what is going on. But I felt very much out of my element on that commission. So thank you for all of your service. And Kris.
Sure.
How
So
about you?
I'm also born and raised here, as my wife Sarah. I went to school in Eau Claire, lived there for a long time, relocated from there to Madison, where I started working in the restaurant industry. I would come home to visit. This is as short as I can make the story. There's more to it, of course, but I would come home to visit often, and a good friend of mine, every time I got back, said, look, what you do if you're born and raised and you grew up in a place that you like, what you do is you go out, you learn a trade, and you come back and practice it in your hometown and give something back. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did. That's why we came back here to open back. That was 2008. 9 years ago, we opened Wagner Market. So my wife and I, with our chef owner, Mike, we own that on Main Street as well. We do not have any children, so the joke in my family between my wife and I has kind of been that downtown is our baby. We like it very much. I'm on and have been on the Downtown Oshkosh Business Improvement District Board of Directors as vice chair for about 12 years. I'm on the Discover Oshkosh Board of Directors, and it was former chair. We were briefly on the Symphony Board. I was president of the Symphony. I've been on the Farmers Market Board. It's lots of good involvement. Slow Roll Oshkosh is me. Oshkosh Jazz Fest and Friends is me. So we've
distinguished ride.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I've been really lucky to be able to do something that I like to do for a living, and be able to do things in the neighborhood in the city that I care a lot about.
Okay.
So why am I running now is not a negative, but I've always thought I'm pretty effective, and through all those things I do, I get a lot of good things done, and I'm proud of the things that I've gotten accomplished, and the bid has gotten accomplished, and Discover Oshkosh has gotten accomplished. In the last handful of years, I find personally more frustration in that process than I had before. I think we can move things forward more quickly. I think we could be more proactive. I think we can collectively be better listeners. I think there's a path to do more, and I think it's a critical time for Oshkosh to do some of that. We have competition in other cities. We need people to move here and stay here, and lots of these things are all parts that make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. And this is for both of you, what are some of the things that you think the city of Oshkosh is doing right? Kristopher.
I really appreciate all the expansion that's happening along Oshkosh Ave. And I know in 2017, 2016, all that conversation was going on with Oshcorp, it was really contentious for that council, making the decision to sell the golf course. And a lot felt up in the air, like what was it going to look like? And from my own personal experience, I certainly appreciate the businesses that have gone in there. Yesterday at Rotary, we had the owners of Taqueria come and tell us about their whole experience. It is so good, but why they chose Oshkosh and how well the city treated them, and I loved hearing those things, and it just adds to our culture. But I think that's a great example of spurring the economy. Mm-hmm. And I'm also interested in what's going to be happening with the mill on Main. I'm excited about the micro hospital. I think some of those progressive things are important. Mm-hmm. And I really love anything that happens along the Riverwalk. I'm a downtown maxi too. I love seeing good things there.
Kris, what do you think the city is doing right?
At current, what we've been best at, I think, is managing debt, doing the basic stuff, making the budget better, and we're pretty good fiscal stewards, typically, which is great. We've talked a lot about debt with regards to street assessments in the last week or so, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. But we've done a really good job, and probably the last 6 years of council can take a lot of credit and should take a lot of credit for that, because that has improved immensely.
So to each of you then, what is the city doing wrong, and how would you improve it? Just give me a couple examples.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead,
I'm going to go first to make it fair, and you can think this time.
All right. So there you go.
To that point, and again, I don't mean to be contentious about it, but the way I was phrasing it on my website is we're good at the chewing gum part, but we're not good at the walking part. We're not doing the rest of it. We can do both things, right? So if we're not better at more things than just the basics, we don't do anything that is quality of life driven or attracting other people to move here driven. And there are lots of examples of that lately that kind of hurt me a little bit. And again, this isn't a begrudging kind of a meeting. I get that. This is positive, and this is. But for example's sake, a good example of that to me is the new water treatment plant at the end of Washington Avenue. We're going to have one. We know it has to be clean water. We know that is the number one resource. We know that it as inexpensive as possible and clean and safe is what matters. Not making that also as pretty as we can very likely might deter people from moving here in the future, because it's a massive resource. It's in an important location. And if I were visiting Oshkosh and I saw that the forefathers or current councilors or whomever decided to put industrial water tanks 10 feet from our best resource, I might have second thoughts about moving here. So what I think we need to maximize is a little bit longer, and long-term planning isn't the right word for it, long-range finance isn't the right committee for it, but an eye towards what makes us competitive to other people and being able to do things that make this nice as well as effective. Because we're really good at effective. I don't know that we're good enough at nice.
And aesthetics, it sounds
It's
like.
part of it, for sure.
All right.
But there are lots of simple things that fall into the category, and they're not all $35 million, right?
Right.
There are simpler things we can do as amenities for the people who live here that people who might want to live here in the future also like.
Let me play devil's advocate
Sure.
real quickly here before we get to Kristopher. With respect to the water treatment plant, it is very close to Menominee Park. That's true. I don't know if I was looking to move here, I would be looking at, the city itself. I don't think that I would be, and I would be looking at businesses and stores and, schools if I had kids and that kind of thing. And by the way, you are a parent. You've got two beautiful little fur babies.
I do have dogs.
They're great looking
they're fun.
dogs.
Thank you. Appreciate
They're
it.
really
Don't tell
cute.
them. Wait, they know.
They know already, right? Dogs have a way of knowing if
Yep.
they're cute or not. But I don't know that I would be looking at a water treatment plant and saying, yeah, boy, that is one ugly thing, and I don't think I'm going to move here because of that.
Maybe not.
But you feel that's a really important thing?
I don't feel that
Or-
one explicitly is the most important thing, but I think making choices with an eye towards how they affect things a generation from now makes a lot of sense. And I
Okay.
don't think we do that very well.
Okay.
I mean, to that same point, and this isn't finalized yet, so I may get beat up on the back end for it, but there's a plan to redo the building at Menominee Park currently, the beach building. It needs to be redone badly. We could also do more and expand the beach and make that more of a place that people want to go and do things in collaboration and correlation with what we have to do for the water treatment plant. As I understand it, that will not and cannot be considered just because it can't. Those are the kinds of things that I think we can, one step further than what we're doing, can benefit us more than what we're getting.
Okay, gotcha. Kristopher,
I'll pick
what
it-
do you
yeah.
not like about how things are going, and what would you do differently?
Before I answer that,
Sure.
to close your thoughts, I think architecture inspires. So whether it's people who live here or people who are moving here, I think if you've got this $30 million water building that's going up, if you can spend a little extra effort to make it look beautiful from the water, from the road, you'll forget that it's just a big box for water treatment, right? And the same goes to the new bridge that's going to be over Jackson, right? It's going to be a big thing going over the highway, as cheap as possible. Put some effort into making sure it looks gorgeous because it's going to be there for the next 75 years. So I agree with what you're saying. What do I think we could do better? I think that we are an over-permitted city. I hear this a lot from contractors who want to work in Oshkosh or who maybe avoid working in Oshkosh because there are some rules and regulations that are just outdated, some sacred cows. I think we could get a third-party audit of our code, the 1,000 pages or so of all of our various ordinances. I think that would be important. And as I've been talking to people, it seems like there are a lot of, I don't know if they're necessarily common sense, but olive branch moments, I've been calling them, small steps that the city could take, let's say with landlords and renters, for example. I hear from landlords their frustration, well, of course, I've got my water here too, that it becomes so expensive to get certified contractors to come in and do even small things, electrical, plumbing, etc. But a lot of these people have the skills to do the repair work by themselves, yet they're not allowed to. Wondering what opportunities there are that we could rewrite some of those ordinances and give certification to those landlords that they would be able to do some of those things, right? They'd be able to better their own properties themselves after they're qualified for it. And the renters would benefit from that, and we'd all appreciate beautification happening sooner to the properties.
Okay.
So,
With respect to both of you serving on these various commissions and boards, and there's a lot of service there, so thank you both for that body of work that you each have done. How do you feel that benefits you to now moving toward a seat on the Oshkosh Common Council? How will that help you?
I can take it first. I went with that way specifically because I have found in talking with counselors from Oshkosh, Neenah, Menasha, Appleton, the ones that I found most effective, before they were there, they served on boards to understand how the city government functions. So that's why I've spent that time doing it. I just think it's important to understand the framework before you throw yourself in there as a populist candidate. You've got to know how the sausage is made before you can make any changes to it.
Yeah, and sometimes that means knowing what's in the sausage too.
Exactly, yeah. Well, for good or for bad, but a lot of my, my civic role models, the Kathy Props of the world, that's what they did and that's what they're doing, and that's something I look up to. So that's why I chose to do it before taking this next step to run.
Okay. Kris?
That's a really hard question for me, like treacherously hard question for me.
Really?
You sort of know, and if you're reading anything I'm writing, I'm a pretty unveiled and honest guy, right? And I like honest answers very much. So to answer your question in an honest manner, I think it honestly makes it harder for me. And that's because the knowing what how the sausage is made part, I sort of know a lot of it already, and I don't mean that to toot a horn here.
Right.
But
right.
I told you a minute ago, the reason that I want to get more involved is that I think things don't move as fast as they should. And I would love to not be in this seat. I would love to not be in this position, but I'm compelled to do so because things aren't getting done rapidly enough. So that's it's a detriment to me to a degree currently, because people think I'm trying to accomplish something when the goal is just to do something. So I hope it's not. And the rest of why that's a hard question for me to answer is I'm not as democratic as you are. As you know, I am pretty cut and dried, and I think I can be a little abrasive when it comes to things like that.
No, but you're honest, and people need honesty and truth.
Well, it's idealistic and it's straightforward, and it's unguarded for the most part. So I don't think, there have been some contentious and difficult things that we've gotten done, and by we I mean the groups I'm involved in the last handful of years, and things like water treatment, where I was on a very vocal side of saying what I didn't like about it. At current, those are not helpful things for me. They're a detriment to my getting anything done, and it shouldn't be the case. But there are stigmas attached to being on the other side of something, and I'm on the other side of some things that have happened recently. So right this second, it's not helpful. It hopefully means I'm very practiced at it, because I can sit at a meeting and do those things all day long. But I don't know that will help me in any way, shape, or form. I will be in the exact same point as everybody else, and I will need to learn how Mike Ford yells at me all the time. I need to learn to be more democratic and be more political, not that word, but to politic better, because I don't do it well. So that will be what I will have to do. I'm good at working with other people.
See, but I like your approach. Exactly. I like your approach because you're not this polished politician. We don't need more of that.
Not in municipal government.
Sorry about my suit today.
No,
Your
it's a great
really
looking
good.
suit. It's a great
I don't
looking
think that's
suit.
what you meant.
I know, obviously.
Right. I'm just saying, and that's why I don't give questions out to candidates when they're coming on the show, because I don't want to hear pat answers.
No.
I want to see candidates who, A, can think on their feet, without knowing what I'm going to ask. Now, obviously, some of these same questions will be asked of the candidates who come on a future show, but they're not going to get all the same questions either. So I want to hear and see candidates being able to think on their feet and react to certain things. But I also like candidates to be proactive, as I think you guys are. And so to not be polished in the sense of giving pat answers, I like that. I do understand what you mean, though, about when you're very vocal, sometimes that kind of pisses people off.
There have been, I won't give you the...
You get pigeonholed then as being someone who may be difficult to work with. I appreciate that. I understand that. And I, too, have been in that position. But I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I do think that you're able to still work with people because you are an open-minded, common-sense individual.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't mean to portray otherwise. I'm glad you didn't take it that way. But
no, I didn't.
No, I mean, I like reasons and reasoned procedural things to go the right direction, but that doesn't mean I'm not open to it. I'm thankful you didn't ask me what the whole point of doing this is, because my answer is really, that's not dumb, but my answer it's not a typical answer either. I think that the right role for somebody who wants to do this job is to literally be the conduit between the general public and City Hall. It's not just manage the city manager, it's not just vote up and down, it's do all the things in the middle, but your opinion will count more than mine if I'm elected, because that's how this works. That's fundamentally the point of it.
Yeah.
But I still have to answer your questions, because you're asking them.
Yeah. And if you don't answer them, well, then I'm just going to stop
Well, you have to
talking.
have a stance, right? I think our electorate deserves representatives who have an opinion on something, a formed opinion, and they
Yes.
state it. You can't
Yep.
just, dance around the issues and not understand what you're representing.
Yes.
But you both strike me as being individuals who are intelligent, possess common sense and reason, and yet aren't so set in your ways that if you get additional information that can maybe form a different opinion within yourself, and you're willing
Has
to
to be
be
the case.
open-minded with that.
Right.
You got to listen to experts.
Yeah, and let's face it, politics is, I don't want to say it's a well-oiled machine because it's far from that, but it is an oiled machine, and it's going to keep moving forward, and things are going to keep happening, and people can either be a part of it or they cannot be a part of it. I'm glad, and I thank both of you for wanting to be a part of it. And I think that as long as people are, you've got to have some opinions, but it's nice to see that you are both open-minded as well, that if you do get additional information that may form a different opinion than what you currently held, that you're willing to go there.
Yep.
And I think that's what we need in candidates for whatever role they're running for.
And right now, I think there's a lot of respect in the current city council. And of the 4 who are remaining, I think all 5 of the candidates right now can work really well with the ones who are staying for the next year, which means we should be able to get along and work on things together and take these things we're hearing from the public and try to turn them into governance.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you brought up the remaining candidates, who on the current council would you say, and specifically with the 4 that are remaining, who would you say that you guys most align with, and who do you least align with? Chris.
I got to meet Joe Stevenson in person. He and I have talked a lot over the past few years since he was elected. We had a very nice coffee. It was delightful. We now talk often. So he and I very much have lots of the same ideas with how things ought to go, which is great. And that was something I don't think either one of us knew about each other before we sat down and had coffee.
Sure.
So it was very apropos. Yeah, I like his background. He's a lot like Mr. Ford, who we all like, because he's very good at this. Not to keep tooting Mike's horn.
This is the Michael Ford fan
Yeah,
club.
this is Mike Ford's show,
Yeah.
apparently.
It should be.
You should just put him on his, yeah.
We miss you, Mike.
Well,
Come back.
Michael Ford has
right.
been a wonderful asset to the council,
Yep.
and he is one of the candidates who is not seeking re-election.
Correct.
And so his seat will be one of the 3 that's up for grabs. So,
But no, Joe, to answer your question, Joe and I were much more closely aligned than we thought we might have been. He said, who would we not?
who would you say you
It's a
are
tough
least
one.
aligned with politically?
Well, I don't know that that's a question that we can really answer yet, because some of the newer ones, I'll just put it this way. Carl I know pretty well from outside of life because we've known each other for a long time, but he's new enough on council where I'm not entirely sure how he is as a councilor, and that's not good, bad, or otherwise. Paul I watched work as mayor and councilor for years. He was elected when I got elected. But I think he's done a great job since he got reelected, which is great. So I'm not trying to skirt around to answer your
Right,
question,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think all of them. I mean, I know there are fundamental differences between what the mayor and I think about with housing and with access to housing, and with low-income housing, and with inspections and RHABs and these types of things. Because he and I
Rental
were
Housing
there.
Advisory Board.
Yes. So we were on the opposite side of that discussion when Matt got elected, and he ran on that platform.
Yes, he
and
did.
I was about the only landlord who stood up publicly and said the opposite. And it's still something I feel strongly about. It may be in your list of questions, and it may not. But he and I have become great friends also. So I know those people really well because of my involvement, because I'm there a lot, and because I have to talk to them all often.
Kristopher, who are you most and least aligned with on the council?
I like to think of myself as a centrist. Politically, I like to weigh everything issue-based. Who am I most alike? Well, let's make this the evening of Joe. I think Joe has done a really good job in his first year. He's also been very easy to talk to, and he reached out proactively to a lot of us who are seeking to do this with some guidance on the process and why we need people who want to do the hard work worth doing. So we'll say Joe there too.
Okay.
I agree with Kris. It's hard to pick someone that you're least alike. There are differences with every candidate from my own personal opinions. So I don't necessarily want to pick one. I don't think that's fair.
Well, all right, let's do it this way then. Let's take one of the most recent controversial issues, and that would be, and one of you alluded to it before, the 522 unit project that's going in phases, of course, over on Lake Butamore Drive. Where do you stand on that?
You had to go there.
Well, I'm going there.
That's fine.
I mean,
you should. It's a good question. It's very
where
appropriate.
do you each stand on that particular issue? And I ask that specifically because, yes, it has already been voted on for the first phase. There are going to be more phases. This is an 8 to 10 year project, several buildings, and each phase will have to come before the council. So if you guys get elected, then this is going to be an issue for you, and you're going to have to vote on it. How do each of you feel about the fact that it was brought forward one way, then it changed, and then the council changed its mind again, and now it's back to its original form? How do you each feel about that?
Well, first off, I think it's important to note that since decisions have already been made, it's important for our city to have effective governance by the new council not coming in and undermining any decisions that have been made before us.
Right, but you are going to have to make future decisions.
But because that first phase is done, not considering that work has been done, and I support that the decisions were made in good faith using the evidence at hand. For the rest of the phases that need to come through and the SIPs, the specific implementation plans that the Plan Commission will review, I think that the city can do more in terms of getting public comment and soliciting feedback ahead of time. I think if the developers are allowed to make change, then the citizens can have input on that. And I hope there are a lot of listening sessions between now and 5 years from now, because this project's going to take, what,
8 to 10 years? 8
Okay,
to 10.
That's what I thought. There is so much opportunity to have better discussion between the developers and the neighborhood in particular. I'm of the opinion.
It is likely to change
Yes.
many times as our community changes. I mean, and we may as well just talk right about affordable housing since we're already kind of there.
Wait, I didn't get to answer that one.
And I
All
didn't
right,
finish
you go
either.
ahead.
Yeah,
You go ahead.
You didn't finish?
No.
Cheryl,
keep it short.
Cheryl, it's your show.
20
Talk
seconds.
to me
I said
about
to ignore
where
you, but
guys
I had to help
stand
us
on
out
that
here.
issue. Finish your thoughts.
I think there's a possibility, if we see a change in the need, maybe there's a change in the expectation of how much housing we need. Maybe the next part of the phase is 3-story instead of 4. Maybe they do more townhouses. The important thing is people need to be heard, and I want to see more of that.
Okay.
I'll be real short, and I will segue for you. How's that sound?
Great.
So
I love segues.
The short answer to that project, the Butamore thing, is a tough one. It's really easy to Monday morning quarterback it because neither of us were elected at the time. What I can tell you, and one of the first things I posted about in this campaign, is that if ever, in my opinion, that could have gone a million times better from the very beginning. What we did wrong was, as a city, we noticed the ratio, the radius of where we needed a radius, which didn't include some people who didn't live in the city,
And it's
but who
rural,
were directly affected by this.
Yeah.
That's a pretty simple solution. Had we not done that, they might have been involved at the beginning, and we could have come to a degree with the developer ahead of time. So one of the first things I pledged, I'm doing this fun first 100 days things, which isn't a concept for things like council, but I do think that progress begets progress in a seat like this one, and doing more things is good. So one of the things that I would like to bring forth is that we should not ever build any project like that in any residential area without a neighborhood meeting ahead of time. Call that whatever you want to call
Several.
it. But
Okay.
Right. And that didn't happen in this case. It just plain,
Well, and you know why it didn't happen.
I do.
And for the viewers and listeners, well, I guess just viewers, this is not going to be on the radio because it's political.
Yes.
But for viewers, it was not done that way because the city ordinances say, okay, we're going to notice neighbors within an X wide radius,
Correct.
kind of like
Yep.
what you said. And in this particular case, because it's more rural than urban or city, the people have their homes a little bit further away. They're outside of
They're
that
spread out.
radius, and therefore they fell through the cracks. So
But still impacted. Still
very much so.
still impacted.
Very much
Yep.
so, and that's why these people are up in arms over
Correct.
this.
Well, but we could have a lot of it, in my opinion.
So
could
would
have
you
been avoided.
recommend changing the ordinance then to
I don't think
tweaking it?
I would, if it were entirely up to me, and I evaluate a lot of things that way. I think we add something to an ordinance like that, where if we're going to build any large project, deem the size, whatever you want it to be, in a residential neighborhood, deem that whatever you want, but plainly what we're doing is not working in this case.
Right.
That's what restaurateurs and people in the food business do. You look at something, if it doesn't work, you just fix it and move on. You don't make a mistake. You
Yeah.
just improve it and do the next thing better.
Right.
We can do the next thing better, is my point. Do you want your segue?
Sure, go for it.
Perfect. So this project, opinion-wise, and I'm not afraid to give my opinion on it, I talked to a lot of people who live there because they reached out immediately, because it's one of the hot issues. I met with people face-to-face and we talked about it, and my opinion is that this project is also probably best and highest use for that parcel. It's a very valuable thing. It's good to have the housing there. We need more housing in general, and it's a good fit for that. Our RDA did a great job of recommending those folks that site because they were looking at the Mill on Main site, as I understand it. They didn't win out on that bid, but we still want them here because we want development. Development is good. Housing is good. It's a good site for what they do. It is not, however, a replacement for low-income housing. The only part of that discussion I didn't like very much is that when it came back to council, which I'm going to skirt around that part of it and not answer you, hopefully, if I can help it, I did not like where council justified some of those actions. I'm not going to say who or why, but you can go back and look. There were people who were using that as an opportunity to say that middle market housing is a replacement for low-income housing and all the housing is housing. That is not true to me because we can do better than that. The RDA is important in this discussion in this instance because they are the ones who recommended the site. But that also means that, again, doing better the next time, we can take those same recommendations from our RDA or acquire properties in the same manner and recommend them to folks who will build the type and product of housing we actually need. And this ain't that. So justifying the action by saying all housing helps all people, it does not.
No, you're absolutely correct. It does not. And this is not going to be what I would deem affordable housing.
It will not be.
It will be market rate housing, which right now market rate housing is probably the high thousands into the 2000s. There is a project out on Witzel. It's called the WIT. They only offer 2-bedroom units, and their rents are either $2,200 a month or $2,300 a month.
You need a roommate.
That's it. Period. End of story on that. And that I don't think people can sustain long term. I'm not running for council, but that's just my opinion. So this is not affordable housing. And you're right, Kris. You can't say that it's replacing housing or it's creating housing that people need. We need housing that people can afford long term.
Correct.
And that's what we need more of. So, I've kind of lost where I was at.
You felt my blood pressure go up, and that's what caused it. We all got lost.
You got it right up in the head.
That's a subject that really, you can tell. That it's a thing I'm passionate about, have been for a long time. I am a landlord. That's not how we treat our properties, and I've got an awful lot of thoughts on the subject.
Well, you're a
as you
subject
know.
matter expert because of all those properties that you own and the people that you work with. So I think it's
What
important
about the
to get that.
environment out there, though? As I understand it, and I haven't talked to the developer, so I can't speak firsthand, but the last show I did had some of the neighbors out there
Yep.
on the show, and the one told me right out, I can't remember if it was on camera or off, that when she talked to the developer about all the species that are out there and how this development is going to basically shove those animals out of their homes, he just simply said, "I don't care," and I don't think that's the way you be a good neighbor
Correct.
to people who are there. You can answer that in a few different ways that are not as abrasive and don't piss somebody off as that did.
We can swear in this show.
Well, you
Well, they
have
can
to
always
be careful
bleep
about
in post.
But, so I am really hopeful that, and those women are coming back, by the way. They kind of got shortchanged on time because there were some time issues. But they're coming back. They had also said a few things that they found they were in error of. So they're coming back on a future show, and they're going to have the whole hour to talk.
It's a fascinating subject, and it's a really good case model for
It
an
is.
awful lot of
So
important
what
things to
about
talk
all
about.
these species that are out there and are losing their homes because we're creating homes for people that most people can't afford? What about that?
Well, you know, to backtrack, for the developer with his or her comment, I imagine they're just in the business of making housing, so they don't necessarily think about those things, not to play devil's advocate for it.
Yeah.
I would hope there was a good environmental study that was done, or that the DNR was a partner on this project. I don't fully know the background of that specific thing, but I remember at one public hearing, somebody stepped up and quoted Joni Mitchell, "Paved paradise, put up a parking lot," and that's, I mean, that's certainly true. I think any kind of development we have to be responsible for nature and put something in that's going to stand the test of time. My biggest concern, well, not my biggest, but probably one of my biggest concern with this housing development is the proposed underground parking. This is a very marshy area,
Correct.
right, and wet, and I'm worried about floodplains and that kind of situation.
Well, just collapse
Yeah,
after a while.
Right, erosion, right. We have so much problem building along the river now because of the various brown spots and
Yeah.
old sawdust sediment. There are going to be future problems.
So how would you guys propose fixing the affordable housing issue in the city? We've got one that is going in on Jefferson Street. And, you know, that's a nice start.
Yep.
But it's just a start, and we need stuff so fast.
Developments like that are great. I'd like to see more of them, and I'd like to see more complexes that go up have a required minimum amount of units that are a certain percent below market rate, be it 25 or 30 or whatever meets that affordable quantity. I think that's a step in the right direction, because affordable means different things on a spectrum to different people. I'd also like to see more creative solutions. I love the tiny houses on Packer, right? They serve a niche for people who need it. I think that more things like that can be developed for affordable housing for single seniors, single veterans, people that need affordable, not giant things that don't necessarily want them. More creative solutions like that, not just necessarily high rises, but it's working with the people who are interacting with these people who need the affordable housing to see exactly what they need, what they want, and working with developers to find where we can do it. And also entrepreneurs who might be able to foot some of the construction bill.
Sure. And, you know, to your point about having more of the tiny village type developments, what I've been told when I've talked to the city people about this is, well, you know, there's zoning issues. Well, fix zoning issues. You know, you can change zoning issues. You have the authority and the power to do that. It's just a matter of sitting down and figuring it out and doing it.
That's been my point from the get-go, and I think we can fix is the wrong word for it, but I think we can proactively approach that with a lot of policy. Kris hit on a bunch of it. Mandating, most cities, if you research this, are mandating a certain portion of new development for housing be low income, which would be great, because you don't need low income by itself. That doesn't necessarily help anybody. It helps the stock in general, but it doesn't help the overall problem, again, as well as you could. And those shortfalls in budgetary measures from a development perspective can be fixed via the city in some instances, and they're also just not that big when you look at the grand scheme of things. Policy and zoning and code is a simpler approach to this. Shorter setbacks, more parcels available to be built on the same piece of land. ADUs, ADUs are everywhere. That's something we just so
accessible dwelling units.
Yes, you've got all the. If I say 3 letters, you've got what they mean.
Alphabet soup.
Well, I
Eat
say
for
it
breakfast.
because I don't know that viewers
And
know
I
what
appreciate
they
that.
mean. So,
But little proactive pieces like that, I think, will go a long ways towards attracting the right kind of development. So the problems we have are we don't have enough low-income units. We also don't have enough high-income units. To your previous point with the one on Butamore, I would bet we can circle back on it here. I bet they all rent. I bet they have no problem renting any of them at that price, because there is a market for that also. That doesn't help what we need here is the point. So that's one more reason it needs to be incentivized and made easier for the folks who want to do it, because it helps us all if the people who want a house have a house, or want an apartment have an apartment. There are simpler, quicker things. We just talked about rental housing advisory boards and inspections. I'm still a huge proponent of an inspections program. I know we have one. I know the whole story about it, as you about how it went the last time it was proposed.
Yeah.
The one we have does not have teeth. I got scolded by Mike Ford this afternoon because I say that things are embarrassing, but I'm going to double down on it right here on your TV show. I am personally embarrassed that this city does not have a proper tenant resource center, and we need one. Mm-hmm. It won't be an immediate fix, but if you have those resources for the people who are probably paying too much for the apartment they shouldn't be paying for, not only does that effectively help fix the rates in the entire market, which makes more lower price available units available to the people who need them, but it also gets the right things the right place for the rest of the people. Then you can move up from one that costs less to more and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. We just don't have that portion of our market because we don't have the resources to enforce it.
Right. Now, I did read on your website that, of course, a tenant resource center is something that you are a huge proponent of. What I'm interested in is you talked about it, Kris, being funded by the city, but not being overseen by, like, the inspections department.
It should absolutely be separate.
Right. And there was another department that you didn't think should oversee it.
It's in planning and inspections are where they fall typically, right? The RHAB was a board and commission in the planning department. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well, they're the ones who sort of headed it up because they were the ones who were going to be getting, the inspections done and that kind of thing.
Sure. But if you want to avoid the retaliatory nature of somebody calling to say there's something broken and having inspections come to fix it, that's not where it should be coming from. There should be an intermediate in there somewhere to make that better.
You wanted it to be, or you're proposing that it be city funded. Don't you think that might be still creating a potential conflict of interest and maybe creating a slippery slope that we don't need? Could it not be funded in some other way where the city has no input financially or otherwise?
That's a great question. I suppose it could be, and that would probably be better. You're not wrong. I don't know how else it could be. The university has one, but it's not. I think they still have, right, a resource center to a degree for.
Oh, I think so.
Right. But bigger, broader, something that everybody can call and know that they can get the support they need. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's a good question. I don't know how to answer it necessarily. It's not imperative to me that it be funded by the city, but it should be provided in a manner where people can use it without the fear of being retaliated against elsewhere.
Right. Okay. All right. There's a vehicle registration fee that is being funded or being proposed.
Haven't watched anything online in the last day or two.
And they're in the process right now as we tape this show. There have been, forums or open meetings, whatever you want to call it, getting people to come and hear about it and to be able to give their input. I'd like to know what you guys think about this vehicle registration fee.
I think we're on the same. Should we do bullet points one after the other?
No, it's up to you. Yeah, do whatever you want to do.
Let's see. Special assessments at large are unfair if you get sacked with it, a huge 5-6 figure bill at once, and we've kicked the can down the road for a long time. Some change has to come. Next point. Just you, go ahead, back and forth.
Oh, I thought it was that one still.
Oh, no,
I agree. Yes, agreed entirely. Yes.
I can keep going. That's fine.
No, I can do it. You can do whatever you want to do.
In general, I think something has to change. I'm fine with the idea of moving forward with a vehicle registration fee. I know it's not the most popular thing, taxation by another name, the wheel tax. I think it is more fair to spread out a small cost to more people than having it be dumped on a small portion that could potentially price people out of their house. I do. I don't think the vehicle tax is a perfect system in terms of what vehicles it gets and the people it doesn't capture. I'm glad that that's only, 40% of the cost, 40-some percent. The other 50 are coming from utilities charges, so you can capture nonprofits, like university, et cetera, paying into that system. It's not perfect, but it is a step in the right direction. And we can talk about sales tax, we can talk about county going to offset that, we can talk about all sorts of things.
Well, my problem with what they're proposing as they're proposing it is, as you just said, Kristopher, it gets the people who have vehicles 8,000 pounds and under. And we all know, it's a proven fact, that your bigger vehicles, your heavier vehicles, the semis and so forth, are the ones that are causing the most damage to our roads. And while our current system is not really fair, neither is what they're proposing the way in which it's being proposed. There's got to be a way to include the vehicles that are doing the majority of the damage.
Well, so this also I have too many words written online already about, but I was on the Transportation Utility Fund Replacement Committee in 2019. I was asked to be on that committee, so it's something I know far too much about.
This is the right time for you to jump in. Thanks, yeah.
Yes. So, Cheryl, to your point, we evaluated every method we could possibly find at that point in time. We presented a model to council. I'm not going to go back into it because I don't want to muddy the waters with other solutions at this point in time, because I do think moving forward is a good thing to some degree. What I can tell you and it's a fun topic to discuss to some degree because of the point you just made. This is as inequitable a playing field as exists in anything. And the solution everybody's seeking always is equity, because you're talking about things we all need. We all need roads.
We all drive on them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there is no effective, fair method to make this work for everybody. So I'm not in love with what's being proposed right this second. After today's meetings, I finally got answers to some of I had some hard mathematical questions about some pieces that weren't making sense to me. The utility portion of it does make up probably not enough, in my opinion, but it makes up some of what you're pointing out. Mm-hmm. The people with the big, heavy trucks are heavier utility users. So the fact that that is more of this than the other one is valuable. The fascinating and hardest part about it for me to swallow is you're talking about 3 regressive taxes. Our special assessment program at current is the most regressive because it doesn't take property value into the equation in any way, shape, or form. So an expensive home with expensive people pay the same amount as an inexpensive home with poorer people. That's not fair. That's the definition of regressive tax.
Right.
Wheel tax in and of itself is a regressive tax, because I explain this a little differently than most people. The problem I have with wheel tax is that the folks who have one car and one job pay less than the folks who have a second household member because they need to have a second job, so they need to have a second car. Mm-hmm. So it's regressive in a different manner. This one makes a little bit more sense because you are taking a piece and you're fixing some of what's wrong with the first part by the second part. It is in no way perfect. If the question were, if I'm elected, I very publicly today said it's good, it's fine by me. It's way better than what we have, and I can support the plan council is working on, because they're trying to get it done rapidly, which is good.
It goes to council on, the 13th?
Like 12 days from now. Mm-hmm. So the reasoning I think that they're trying to get it done rapidly is because there's an appetite for it, and that's great. And progress is progress. So I can't go back on my words and feelings for it. I don't love it. If it were me, to your point, and maybe there's room for refinement on this portion in the future. Not to take too long because we already got a 20. Well, I don't know where we're at now, but
we've probably got about 12 minutes left, and I got lots of things I want to get to.
There is room to make it short on the utility portion of that to do more things beneficial for all of us if we put more money in that basket. And maybe that comes in the future.
Okay. Just real quickly, current Mayor Matt Mugerauer is proposing changing the term mayor to council president. Quickly, how do you guys each feel about that?
1,000,000,000% yes. Great idea.
All right.
Well, there's a history lesson in there, too. It wasn't that way, 20 years ago? I think Paul Esslinger was the one really trying to push that change, as I understand it. And I think currently the way that we have a mayor is confusing to people from different cities. The Oshkosh mayor is not the same as the Neenah mayor, where the Neenah mayor is elected and they are the city executive. So I think in a way it is a stab at other mayors who truly do run the city. And I'm fine changing it to a council president. I think that has as much weight as a school board president. You don't think that has anything wrong with it?
Nope. It muddies the water. It makes things more confusing. People think there's power there. It makes elections harder.
And there's also a cost to it, right?
Correct.
The special elections for the mayor.
Yep.
You can save some
So
taxpayer
kudos
dollars.
to Matt for the suggestion. Hope they get it done.
Kristopher, you are suggesting that there might be a parking problem downtown, and therefore are advocating or think it would be a good idea to put a parking structure up. You call it a multi-level parking alternative. We had a parking ramp downtown at one time, as you well know. For what it was there for a long time, and then it was taken down. It fell into disrepair. It was taken down. Do you think we still have a parking problem downtown? And where would you propose putting something like this so that it kind of benefits everybody who, maybe is further south or further north than where you think it should go?
I'll start by clarifying the source that you're taking that from was an inspirational blog of visioning what could happen in the next 15 years. Things that I want to see come to downtown include large anchor businesses, more housing that would draw people to the city center, and as those things come, we're going to need different parking solutions. Do I think there's a parking problem right now? Not terrible. I think it can get a little congested during the farmers market, or if people are picking up some really good fish on Friday from the Roxy on Division Avenue, which I think we need better marking for parking on Division, but that's a different thing. No, I don't think we need a parking structure right now. If we did, though, I really think somewhere in the 400 or 500 block, right in the middle, because we're going to have more changes in that 500 and 600 moving forward, be it
400 to
housing.
500 block of what?
Main Street, right?
Okay.
And so this would go between Main and Jackson in my mind. But again, we want parking studies, and we want those that kind of datum to say, oh, do we actually need this, and where are people parking?
Yeah.
Right now, people like to be sprawled out, parking behind Kits and File and Two Blondes. Like you like to go there and walk,
Yeah,
and people
of
like to
course.
park closer to where
Sure.
they have to go. I get it. But as central as possible, 15 years from now, might be a good solution.
Yeah.
Cheryl, can I give you more on that one?
Yes, please.
If you don't mind.
Someone who
Go ahead.
knows about ramps, yeah.
No, different, not ramps this time. So since last July, I've been working on a provision. It will be an ordinance change with the city. If it weren't for an assessment thing right now, it was supposed to be read in at the next council meeting, but we got bumped from the next council meeting. As short as I can make it, you'll hear a lot about it from me coming. I'm trying not to spoil it, and I'd like to get to council before I have to talk about it, because that seems more fair. But essentially what we figured out with the bid and myself is that we have about 150 unused permitted spaces marked downtown Oshkosh. So we have a new plan working with the parking utility and with the transportation board that will free up 100 parking stalls in our lots downtown the second it's implemented, and create a new product where if you want to reserve a stall, you can lease a stall all by your own. You can put your name on it.
On a monthly basis or weekly, or how would that work?
We're aiming for annual with a minimum monthly.
Okay.
The price is a little bit higher than what you can pay for a permit right now. So that number can be fluid and flexible based on how many get used from permitted to not. But it was astounding when we started going through that to figure out that we allocate 250 permit stalls and only sell 50 permits. And
That-
yet
that
don't
is amazing.
and yet don't
And
enforce
And those
them.
are at
Correct.
least spread out
Just
throughout the downtown
yes,
area,
and
so
there's-
that's nice.
And there's fluid there, so they're not required to be one lot or the next lot. So if you want one, if you want to stall behind Kits and File because you go there, you can literally put your name on it for X amount of dollars, which will be great. So not only do we gain, and that's not really for you, I hate to tell you, but if you want to, you'll be able to.
Right.
That is for the businesses who the point of contention is always, if you get your hair done downtown, it might take 4 hours. We only have 2-hour parking. Now it's not enforced because we can't afford to enforce it because for lots
Well,
of
it
reasons,
is
but
enforced.
to a
I
degree,
see the
sometimes.
cops around there all the time.
But to that point, those businesses will now be able to get the spots they need for the same similar amount that they're paying in permits now. So it solves a lot of those problems at once and frees up 30% more parking in downtown for free.
That is
I
great.
love seeing that kind of stuff. That's the creative solution we need.
Kristopher, one of the things that you also said is that you would like to see the downtown, the town motel raised and a multi-level structure of some kind put there with a grocery market on the main floor and other things
Right.
on higher floors. I think a lot of people would probably applaud getting rid of the town motel. Where would we go with those people? Because obviously people would be displaced. So where would we go with them? And if you had a market on the main floor, or on any floor for that matter, would that not be in competition with the food co-op that we have downtown?
A lot of questions in this one question. So I'm going to start by encouraging anybody to go read the blog to see it for yourself. The example that you're giving is just an idea that I had, nothing that I'm specifically proposing. The town motel in and of itself, you love it or you hate it, right? Once upon a time,
loves it.
well, once upon a time, from a historical perspective, it was actually a draw. We were being progressive. People could park their cars and see them from their space. That was a thing when it went up. That was interesting. Right now, there are more, shall we say, seedy connotations to it. And yes, people do need the space. And I think if it were to go somewhere, before it did, whoever was doing the demolition, be it the city buying the property or whatnot, should ethically have some sort of plan for those people.
Okay.
So by the time that happens, I hope there are more and better affordable housing options. So you're not paying, for a monthly rate of $1,000 or whatever it is at this particular space. Okay. So that's one question there.
Okay.
Two, the idea that I had was for a really fun ethnic foods market. And I know that is far-fetched. There's this place I go to in Minneapolis that I just love, and I could see that we were getting such a great immigrant population. And one of my favorite things about new cultures is the food and the music they bring. This would be a great central place for small stalls. Yes, it would be competition to the Co-op and Wagner Market.
We're down to about 3.5 minutes. Just real quickly, how do you each feel about using TIF money for development? And I know that that's a that's a big question for a short period of time, but just real quickly, how do you feel about it? Let me narrow it down. How do you feel about using it for every new development that is being proposed in the city?
I went first last time.
Fine. Well, it won't be used for every, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, the city has a history of doing that.
There are a lot of them. I looked
Yes.
through, I read the budget last night to find a bunch of numbers for a different thing, and yes, there are an awful lot of funds.
To the point where we were almost tiffed out at
Pretty
one
close,
point.
yep. So it's a tough question for me in general. We don't have time to answer it as much as I'd like to. In general, I'm a fan of private development taking the lead, so in any instance where we don't need to use that type of financing, that'd be great. If I'm really honest, PAYGO has been wonderful for the last, how long have we been in that system? 20 years, probably 15 years. I am almost to the point where I'd rather see the city take more skin in the game for more return more rapidly and move away from the PAYGO portion, put money really towards the projects we believe in and go back to a traditional TIF method where we can, because the return is faster.
Okay. Kristopher?
I'm a capitalist too. I like to see the free market handle these kind of developments. But what I like about TIF in particular is the Community Development Block Grant funding that we can get from them in the last year, and we can extend that to fund more projects too. We've used it a lot, and I think it needs to be used appropriately. Like when we think of the developments that went up, those 4-story developments we talked about earlier today, there were some concerns whether that was appropriate for TIF funding or not. A lot of conversation about that. So I think whatever we do fund with
and
TIF,
for the record, it did not get any TIF funding.
No, but there was conversation around that. So I think we just
Well, the
need better
developer wanted
communication.
it, but they didn't get it. So, all right. Well, gosh, we're down to 2 minutes.
You didn't get very far on your pages.
I didn't, but I
talk too much, Kris.
I did hit a lot of my
You
questions.
got a lot of stuff, yes.
Just kind of a fun type question. Kris, you are suggesting, or you've put the idea out there, an urban dog park in Roe Park.
Yeah.
Tell folks quickly where Roe Park is
Sure.
and why that should be a
That's an
urban
easy
dog
one. That
park.
was the shortest little newsletter I wrote on purpose. So Roe Park is the beautiful green space next to the downtown YMCA between there and sort of Washington Avenue. There's a beautiful playground there. It is sort of underutilized because mainly green space. There was an ice skating rink there from Dr. Ulrich for a minute, and now it's somewhere else, which is good too. I think that there should be a downtown dog park because our central city houses 18,000 people, and progressively those folks like to have dogs because dogs are awesome. So it's a very low-hanging fruit amenity for people, again, back to the beginning of the day, beginning of the meeting here. People who want to move downtown want to know where they can have a dog to go outside. So having that resource is just so easy and inexpensive. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. I've only got 15 minutes each to give you. Look into that camera right there.
15
we'll
more
start-
minutes.
All right.
I'm sorry, 15 seconds. Kristopher, look into that camera. Tell people in 15 seconds why they should vote for you.
I've put in the work. I like doing the work, the hard work that we need to do. I like to listen and grow, and this is the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
All right, Kris.
I'm not a call to action guy. We discussed that earlier, so I'm not going to tell you to vote for me ever, ever, ever. Vote for whoever you think is best. I have lots
I'll
of
tell you to
words.
vote for Kris.
I have lots of words at voteoshkosh.com and lots more to come. So it's about telling the stories and getting the right work done.
Yes,
And
check our
very
website.
good. Thank you
Exactly.
guys for being here. We've been putting your websites up throughout the show.
Thank you.
Call your city or county clerk to find out how to register to vote if you're not registered. And we've also been putting up a website address to get an early ballot or what have you. So thanks again, guys, for being
thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Appreciate you doing
Thanks
it.
to my crew.
It's fun to do it together.
And thanks to you guys at home and on the radio, wherever. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.
Good job, Roxanne.